Thank you for joining us for this sermon podcast from United Christian Church of Austin, where no matter who you are or where you are on life's journey, you're invited and welcome. This sermon from January 11th, 2015 is a reflection on baptism, beginning with Jesus' own baptism by John in the Jordan from Mark chapter 1, verses 9 through 11. Worship also included an opportunity to remember and imagine our baptism in a truly multi-sensory way. If you enjoy this podcast and would like to learn more about our open and affirming ministry, you can head over to our website, www.uccaustin.org. Thank you. In those days, Jesus came from Nazareth of Galilee and was baptized by John in the Jordan. And just as he was coming up out of the water, he saw the heavens torn apart and the Spirit descending like a dove on him. And a voice came from heaven, "You are my Son, the Beloved. With you I am well pleased."
Prize over there. Yeah. Oh, where? So who is not? Thank you. Okay. All right. Anybody not get wet enough?
Hey.
Yeah? Ready? So, a brief reflection this morning on baptism. We talk about remembering our baptism in this service today. There's a problem with remembering our baptism, though. Anybody know? Well, some of us were too small to remember when we were baptized. We were baptized as little babies, and some of us may not have been baptized at all yet. And so when we come and talk about remembering a baptism, that's why I say we remember and we reaffirm and we also imagine what baptism might mean for us. It can also be useful to imagine what baptism might mean for us even if we've already been baptized. God knows there are any number of reasons to get baptized, some of which are even good. I think about all the number of folks that I've baptized, they're little babies because their relatives were terrified that that little baby was not going to go to heaven unless it was baptized. I've heard stories from some of you who felt pressure when they got older into those teen years when all of their friends were getting baptized and it was getting to look a little late for you. And so you decided this would be the Sunday that you would make it forward and get baptized. There's all kinds of good and bad reasons for baptism, but it's such an incredibly powerful symbol because of the water that we use. What an incredible symbol. What is water for us in our world? What is water and what does it do? What?
Life.
Well, it's kind of an abstract-y kind of answer. What does that mean for us? That it's life for us?
It grows things.
We drink it. We've got to keep hydrated because there's so much water already within us to begin with. We have to drink more water to make sure we have enough. What else?
Cleans us.
It cleans us. Hopefully, most of you are acquainted with the cleansing powers of water. If not, this could serve as a happy introduction for you along the way. But that is certainly part of the image of water. In fact, we still, I hope, we wash our hands before we come to mealtime.
We
right?
cook with it.
What else?
We cook with it.
We cook with it as well. And what would we have anything to cook if there weren't water?
It helps plants grow.
Right. People in Texas have come face to face with the reality of how important water is for the world around us and all of those things that grow. What else is water for us?
Beautiful.
The choir can let someone else answer for a change. The choir can let someone else answer for a change. Sorry, so we'll come back to you. What else is it for us? What does water do in the world? It floats things. It carries things. Floods. Water can have terrible, terrible destructive power. If you see water flowing over the road, what do? Turn around and go the other way, right? In Central Texas, we know that even in just that, a little bit of water can be so, so powerful. Of course, people living along the coast know even more, right? The power of water in hurricanes and floods and tsunamis. The power that can even move houses and boats and buildings. Incredible power. But not just destructive in that way, but anyone ever been to the Grand Canyon? What made the Grand Canyon? Water. Water flowing drip by drip by drip over thousands of years, literally changing the landscape around us. Going back to all of our very beginnings, the hymn, I love the hymn that we started with this morning because it remembers the very first waters that we know. The waters in our mother's womb that surround us, and we're floating in that safe space inside when we're not yet even born. The water that Jesus shares with us is because he was born in that same way as well. All of this incredible, powerful imagery. But as we said already, we do baptism in so many ways. Baptism has split the church, just like the Grand Canyon, right down the middle. In our congregation, we come from a variety of traditions, but two main traditions that celebrate baptism in different ways. From the United Church of Christ, where we generally baptize whom? Infants, little tiny babies. And from the Disciples of Christ tradition and others, where we generally baptize whom?
Immersion.
Right, by immersion. And do we immerse little tiny babies? Generally not, right? You got to be a little older than that. So who in this room was baptized as a baby, you think, because someone told you? Right? How many of you were baptized later in life? All right. What age were you when you got baptized? 12? Jane was 5 years old. You need to talk to Nikki, because Nikki really wanted to be baptized at 5 and had to wait till she was 7 in order to do that. Well, at 12, but generally it's what? 45. All right. Late bloomers. 36. Exactly. But most people, what we're going to say in that sort of 12, 13, 14 age, right? Right? You know, when we've reached the age of reason. And we do that. And we do think of these practices as practices that divide the church, but really it's impossible to think about them apart from one another. They really are two sides of the very same coin. When we baptize little tiny babies, does that little baby make promises? Are we going to hold that little baby to promises that they have made? No. It's all about God's love that comes to us unbidden. God's love that surrounds us like those waters in the womb. Before we can ever name it or claim it for ourselves, God's love is all around us and holding us in love. And then when we baptize little babies, that's what we're emphasizing. God's love before we can choose it. And when we baptize older children and young adults and adults, we're baptizing because we choose God. We're responding to the love of God that's already claimed us from before we were born, and we're responding and saying, yes, this is where I'm going to stand. Now, of course, in traditions that baptize little tiny babies, what do we generally do at 12 and 13? Confirmation class. And in traditions that baptize older folks, oftentimes there's something that we do with little babies. What's that? Dedication, right? Anybody notice the similarities there? It's really just a matter of where we draw the emphasis at the time. But we know that it's important to claim both sides of that God's love is with us from before and all the way through and all the way to the very end, and that we choose and participate in that love and try to love God back. It's impossible to separate these two things, even though the church has been trying to do it for years and years and years and years and years. But what a gift to be part of a congregation that celebrates both of those things coming together. And we can do both. We can baptize out of this font. We can baptize out of the baptistry that's up there behind the curtain and whose plumbing is not quite working, or else it would be running today. We don't get to use it all that often. But I got to do my first baptism by immersion at Easter time this past year when we baptized 8 young people who were making their confirmation and getting baptized as well. And I think how blessed I am to have celebrated, to have reaffirmed my own baptism by immersion. I was baptized as a little baby, but a couple of years ago at a conference, my friends, it's a nationwide group of mostly African Americans. They self-describe as Methodabapticostal in their religious background. And they are also, like us, open and affirming of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender folks. They have this conference every year. It's fantastic. And I got to reaffirm my baptism by taking the plunge for full immersion in the pool of the Tropicana Hotel in Las Vegas, Nevada. At 6 a.m. in the morning. And if you want there to be nobody in the pool in Las Vegas, Nevada, 6 a.m. in the morning is the only time that you can do that. But I got to experience that feeling. The feeling of being baptized as an infant is being held and caressed and paraded around and showed off. Part of that feeling of being baptized as an older adult is sheer terror. Putting your life literally in someone's hands if they were to hold you under just a little extra long. But you take that risk to respond to the love that God has risked for you. The point I want to leave us with this morning, though, is that oftentimes, as we're talking about this, baptizing either little babies or older folks, that oftentimes we think of baptism as an arrival, someplace we come to our baptism, we get baptized, and we plant ourselves in the pew and never move again. But the church from the very beginning has affirmed that the water that we use in baptism is living water. And that means living and moving water, flowing water. It's not a stagnant pond. It's not even just a little bowl or a big baptistry, but it's a moving water. Until only recently, churches always baptized outside in lakes and rivers and even in the ocean to remember this moving quality. Because when we get baptized, the point is not to plant ourselves like a house plant on the pew having just been watered and sit there, but to be moved and carried away by these waters. We pray that the waters of God's love flow through us and carve a new channel in the world, in our lives and the world around us, like the Grand Canyon. Something completely new. Change the landscape of our lives, O Lord, as individuals and together. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to reaffirm our baptism today, and to do it in this way that gets us moving a little bit and giggly and uneasy, getting pelted with water. To remember that that water is supposed to move us. And for us to wonder together where God is moving us. One of the age-old images of the church has always been the ship. That we are a ship that sails on God's love out into the world, to new places, to do new things. We ride on the waves and the tide of baptism out into the world. It's not about bringing people in, getting them moist, and planting them for the rest of their lives. It's about where God is flowing today to take us, the church, all together out into the world. So friends, remember and reaffirm and imagine your baptism today. That's the reason we pour that water. If you've been wondering, it's the reason we've been pouring that water at the beginning of every service, to remind us that those waters flow under everything that we do. They bring us to the table and they flow us right back outside, out into the world. May God bless us, voyagers on this journey all together. And may God keep getting us wet, making us uncomfortable, and moving us beyond. Amen.
Hera, hera, hera,